What is up, everybody, and welcome to the Lineup HQ show where we're going to run through this NBA Finals Game 1, Denver and Miami, and just give you some players and just discuss it generally. Joined by SquirrelPatrol, and I'm hoping we have some more of these along the way. But Game 1, NBA Finals, big prize pools out there for Showdown. Squirrel, how you doing, man? Are you ready for some NBA Finals action?
Good, yeah. It's the end of the NBA season. It's been a wild ride, but yes, massive prize pools. It's good to see. It's good to see with the single game format really taking off, and got a pretty interesting NBA Finals matchup like Denver and Miami. Not a lot of people saw it coming, but I like it. I like it's two teams, talented teams. I like that it's not these like kind of superstar created teams, right? Like it's the kind of more organic, like building through the draft. Good coaching. So we'll see. It's an interesting setup because Miami is coming off this kind of grueling 7-game series with Boston where they were up 3-0 and then just had to pull it off on the road in Game 7, whereas Denver had the sweep against the Lakers. So they've had some rest, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. Denver is not an easy place to go into and play. Actually, I think the only NBA game I went to in person this year was in Denver. So like my first time in Denver for the live finals. It took us to a Nuggets game. So it's not an easy place to play. There's altitude, there's rest concerns. I think Denver's like a 9-point favorite at home. So should be an interesting setup.
In your wildest dreams, did you have Miami in the finals this year?
No, and it doesn't look like Vegas had it either, right? Vegas had Miami as an underdog playing Boston, but Jimmy Butler just keeps pulling it off. I was reading, I think it's Butler's been in Miami 4 years, and they've been in the conference final. I think like 3 times. Like it's ridiculous. But yeah, it keeps getting it done. So it probably isn't as big of a surprise as it is.
Yeah. So we'll give some predictions at the end. But let's start talking about some players that we can, deal with here. And for this Game 1, we're talking about DFS. We'll start off on DraftKings, and we won't do the whole lineup or anything. We'll just fill out some guys. We got to start at the top. Got to start with Jokic, who's been just a dominant, not just real life player, but fantasy beast also. Is there any scenario tonight where you can make a roster and you don't play him at all? Like, is he just stone cold locked to either be a captain or a utility?
Yeah, I think he's probably going to be. I want to have some super hot take and say like, no, you don't need Jokic, but I think you do. Like, I think he's got to be either the captain or utility. So I can definitely see scenarios where he's not the optimal captain, but he's going to be there, just the raw points. Obviously, like a first quarter injury or something like that.
Yeah.
I think there's some interesting scenarios you can play with where maybe this game is a blowout, either direction, but more likely with Denver having a big fourth quarter lead. Miami's got a quick turnaround to get to Denver and play at the altitude. Like maybe Denver really blows them out. And so the game stacks are a little bit different than what we would expect, right? Like, let's say any number of players on Denver has like a big first 3 quarters, whereas Jokic is having kind of a mediocre game for him. And then the Denver starters are resting in the fourth quarter, something like that. You could see scenarios where like Jokic is not the optimal captain. But even in that scenario, he's probably there at the utility.
Yeah. So are you most likely to play Jokic? Would he be your favorite captain, or if we're talking about captains, or would you prefer to go a cheaper route?
I'd probably prefer to go cheaper. I think he's going to be a really popular captain. Probably about a quarter of the teams are going to have Jokic in the captain spot. And so I think you want to get different. I guess that's something we should emphasize for these single game shows. We emphasize it in football. You emphasize it all season long in football. For basketball, like you're trying to avoid duplicates here. So, it doesn't mean you can't play Jokic in the captain, but I think if you're playing Jokic in the captain, you want to either leave some salary on the table or make sure you're playing 1 or 2 really low-owned players or both. So I'll do that with some of my lineups if I'm max entering this contest. But I think for the most part, my more traditional lineups, I'm going to try to go overweight the other guys in the captain spot.
Fair enough. Let's I'm just gonna, before I get into the captain pick real quick, I'm gonna give you some names. I'm gonna throw the names out there one by one. I just need, like, as if you were doing a short little article here. Just give me 3 or 4 sentences on what you think about this guy from a DFS perspective tonight. Jimmy Butler.
He's priced up too high. That's my initial take. He's just priced up too high. He's obviously the main guy for Miami, but his price is just too much at 13,400 on DraftKings. Like, I'd much rather play Jokic. So I'm probably going to end up both underweight Jokic and Jimmy Butler in the captain spot, because I think a lot of people that are hand building are going to be clicking on that Jimmy Butler name just if they don't want to play Jokic, right? Like, if they want to play a guy from Miami, they're going to play Jimmy Butler. So probably going to end up underweight both Jokic and Butler.
Yeah, my quick synopsis of Butler would be capable of absolutely winning you an entire tournament, and also capable of eliminating you real quick. He's great, but he can be inconsistent with the way he plays from a DFS perspective. What about Jamal Murray?
It's one of my favorite guys tonight, because I think that's a way to get different. Not a lot of people are going to have him in the top spot, right, on either site. And he is a guy that, like that scenario that I described earlier, where like maybe Denver's blowing them out, like Jamal Murray can put up a lot of points. Whereas Jokic tends to be more of an all-around game. So like Jokic could go out there and put up like 14 points, 14 points, 12 rebounds, 8 assists, and he's having a pretty mediocre DraftKings game. But we're saying, like, wow, he's almost hit a triple-double, and Jamal Murray is pours in 40 points. And then suddenly, like, you need Jamal Murray in the captain spot, not Jokic. So he's one of my favorite pivots tonight.
My breakdown of Murray would be just absolutely fantastic. Playoff player. And if they decide to defend Jokic more, and they leave Murray a little bit unguarded, man, he can be the slave breaker. Bam Adebayo, this is going to be a polarizing guy tonight. What about Bam?
I like Bam tonight. I like Bam in this series because he had such a terrible series against Boston, but that's not that much of a surprise, because like Boston, I think, is like 6th in the NBA during the regular season in like points in the paint allowed the 6th fewest. Denver ranked 22nd in points in the paint allowed. Bam, over the course of the regular season, had the 8th highest points in the paint scored per game in the NBA. Even in the playoffs, I think he's 10th. And he's had a kind of what I think a lot of people consider a pretty mediocre playoff run, at least on the offensive end. So I think he has a lot more room to operate against Denver, I think, than he did against Boston. But everyone is thinking about that Boston series, thinking about how terrible he looked. So I think he's underpriced, and I think he's going to go under-owned just based off of the perception coming off the Boston series. So the 2 guys I like, and the 2 guys I'm probably aiming to be the most overweight on, are Jamal Murray and Bam Adebayo.
Yeah, my breakdown of Bam would be he has absolutely struggled with Jokic for several games here recently. Only had, I think, a combined 11 or 12 rebounds this year against Jokic in a couple of games. That's not good. Playing Bam, I think, is more of a bet on Spoelstra tonight, doing something different, changing it up. And I think that's a pretty good bet. I don't think Spoelstra is going to beat his head against the wall and try to do the same things that's gotten him beat. I think he comes out with something different, so I like that one. Then we got some role players. Michael Porter Jr., you believing in his hype?
Yeah, I think so, man. He's always been like a talented NBA player. And so, fan of Michael Porter Jr. tonight. And then like going to Caleb Martin.
Do you believe that's going to continue? The Caleb Martin, like this big breakthrough, is it going to continue this series?
I think it can, right?
Or at least we stay on the train until Game 3 when Tyler Hero comes back. Then we just completely abort the train when everybody else is jumping on it, right?
Right. I mean, I don't like. It was 48 points in his last, 48 DraftKings points in his last 2 games, each of the last 2 games. I don't know if I see that continuing. Like nobody else has stepped up with Tyler Hero out. Well, I guess Gabe Vincent to some extent, but like Caleb Martin like has not looked like a role player these last few games. So I'm a believer at his price at 7,400 on DraftKings. I think you said it. Yeah, until Tyler Hero comes back, I mean he hits that mid range price, and like minutes are going to be an issue in the finals. Like you're not going to see like some extended like 12-man rotation, right? Like it's the minutes are going to be limited, and the minutes are there for Caleb Martin in this series. So fan of Michael Porter Jr. and fan of Caleb Martin.
And the last one I want to touch on real quick, Aaron Gordon, who's had, the beginning of his career, he was a number one option on a team. And now he's kind of settled into Denver. And sometimes he gets lost in the mix, both by DFS players and just gets lost in the mix by Denver themselves. He just doesn't contribute a whole lot in the score box as far as DFS points. Does this seem like a good Aaron Gordon series to you, or are we going to see a lot of what the inconsistency we've been seeing in the playoffs?
I think we're probably going to see the inconsistency. He is. I mean, he's not the first option. He's not the second option. Now he's not the third option. So, I mean, I probably see the gap between Contavious Caldwell-Pope and Aaron Gordon as maybe smaller than the salaries would even dictate. Probably a little bit, relatively a bigger fan of like KCP than Aaron Gordon. But I mean, he'll probably have a game this finals series where like you need to have him in the winning lineup. It's just going to be tough to predict that game.
Yeah. A quick, just looking at something real quick. You look at Denver. I think we kind of know what Denver is. It's Jokic, like head and shoulders, and Jamal Murray so great and he's next. And then there's a clear divide between and to the next guys. Michael Porter Jr., Bruce Brown's been awesome. Can't mess with Bruce Brown. Aaron Gordon, KCP, and that's it. Like I'm not. Maybe you would play a little Jeff Green, a little Christian Brown. I don't know if you can go that route, but that's definitely a big fall off. You can see it's a pretty short rotation right there. Now, when we look at Miami, here's the thing that interests me is we know Butler and Bam's going to do stuff and Caleb's going to do stuff, but they're role players. Every series, Spoelstra just gets the guy that he feels like has the best chance to prosper in that series, and that's the guy that we get a lot of run, and we need to be on it early. Like a couple series ago, we saw a lot of Kevin Love, and then the last series against, but we saw no Kevin Love, and there was earlier in the playoffs, there was a Kyle Lowry series, and then there was zero Kyle Lowry hardly on the floor. Gabe Vince, Max Strus does that sometimes. So if we can guess the proper role player for Miami to start the series, we can really get a leg up on in the showdown shows in game one. Who do you think is the most likely to emerge out of this as the role players that are going to see the floor the most?
So I do think that you nailed it. That I think Miami role players is the place to get a little bit different because we could see somebody reemerge that we haven't seen in a little bit. I probably like Kevin Love, because I think they got to at least try it, and he could get run off the floor defensively, right? Like he might not be able to match up defensively, and so he could see a few minutes and then not emerge again off the bench, but. I think, Spoelstra's going to at least try it, right? You got to at least try it. So I think that Kevin Love is probably the guy that I think is my favorite for the salary to at least, try and put in there and hope that he has like a bigger game than he was having in the Boston series. Maybe after that, maybe Haywood Highsmith and then Cody Zeller. But it could be the exact opposite, right? Like maybe Cody Zeller matches up better defensively against Jokic, so he's getting the extended run. My guess is just with this game, I think Miami might need the points, and so it might be Kevin Love over Zeller and Highsmith.
Man, I like that call. I liked him too. I like him too going into game one. Nobody's going to play him coming off of no minutes against Boston. And the truth is, I think there might be a role for him in this series. And I think it might be to be the initial guy Like, they're not going to stop Jokic anyway. And they might not even have any reason to try. Like, they may say Jokic can beat us. We're just not going to let anybody else beat us. They may put Kevin Love out there just to kind of be the guy who takes up space against Jokic, and then maybe get Bam to come over to help a little bit. But point being, Kevin Love gets out there, is the initial cover guy on Jokic, and he's a good rebounder. So you can get some rebounds that way. And he's a great outlet passer. They may want to push the pace and get some easy baskets in transition like he did against the Knicks with those outlet passes. I like Kevin Love at this price. Can we just take a shot on winning the really big prize pool and put Kevin Love in captain? And if we airball, we airball. But if it hits, this guy can get us like all the others. We know Murray, Jokic, and probably Butler are going to have big games. We could maybe get them all in there if we get Kevin Love at captain. What do you think?
I think you can do that. I think that lineup will be pretty heavily duplicated. Because
with Kevin Love, well, we got Kevin Love at. Let me pull up the captain. The captain, like Kevin Love is 0.1, like a 0.1% in captain as our initial projection. It might not be that duplicated.
Yeah, I agree. I think you should try to be overweight Kevin Love captain lineups.
Let's plug him in it. Like, I don't know. Just where, if we airball, we airball. What's the odds you win $1 million on a showdown anyway? My gosh, without tying. So we'll go crazy and we'll get. But the reason I would play this is simply to get the next 3 studs in there. So that would be would that be your preferred choice here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're doing 150 and you lock in Kevin Love in the captain spot, like, you'll have some different lineups.
Yeah. All right. So we got that going. 2 spots, almost $4,000 left per spot. If we really wanted to really get different, then we could make one of these spots, really off the charts here. But what do you think about one of these last 2 spots? How do we play that with the salary we have left?
Let's see, we got Jokic, Butler, Murray. Yeah,
there is you got a 2v2 after this, and you got to figure out. You could go a guy like Aaron Gordon, take a shot at that, and then go. You mentioned Highsmith. Now we got some really low-owned guys in there, along with the absolute studs. That's a path. Or you just go 2 guys, some closer in price range, like a Strus or a Duncan Robinson, and somebody like. There's some paths here you can go by. What do you? Let's just do one more guy in this lineup. Who do you feel like fits this lineup pretty good?
I'd put in Michael Porter Jr.
Oh, can we even? Do we have a? I don't think we have a player that. Is there a $300 player on the board?
Oh, we have 7,900 left for 2. I see. All right, yeah. So we can't do MPJ.
6,900 is our max price here.
Yeah. So let's see. I'd try KCP, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope.
I like it. Just another role player for Denver. And
what I like about him is it's looking at him versus Aaron Gordon. Like, it's hard to see Aaron Gordon having a big outlier game, right? Because he's just not the main offensive weapon. Like, he's not going to get, he's probably not going to get 20 rebounds, right? Like with Jokic out there. So he's not going to take a bunch of 3-pointers. But like KCP, like, he could get hot from 3-point range, right? Like, he could see a situation, say, he shoots 6 of 7 from 3. Like, that's an outlier game. That's not that incredibly difficult to see. I mean, look at his last game, 3, 4, 2, 3 3-pointers made. Like, yeah, I mean, if that number bumps up to 5, then suddenly he's on the winning lineup. And that's not an inconceivable situation. So, yeah, I like the idea of maybe putting KCP in there, and then that leaves about 2,300 that we could use on another player.
Yeah, I think actually, you look at KCP, he's demonstrated some ceiling in these playoffs alone, and he's had playoff experience in the past. He's done well. He's demonstrated some ceiling. He certainly has a good floor. Like, he's not that far off. The first guy you mentioned was Michael Porter Jr. He's not that far off of Michael Porter Jr. He saves you a little bit of money. Yeah, I like that one. But I like the way that, like, if you want to win this money tonight, you're going to have to take a chance. I think Kevin Love is a massive chance in captain. Like I said, he could end up with 0 minutes on the floor tonight. Then you just chalk this $15 up and you move on. But if he comes out and we get a little Spoelstra magic, man, if he cracks just 25 DraftKings points, we're absolutely rolling because we know what we're going to get out of Jokic, Butler, and Murray tonight. And we know we're going to get something good. So I don't mind that. Let's go to FanDuel real quick. We've already talked about the players. Let's just talk about how we would divvy this up. MVP, Star, Pro. It's just a totally different format over here. How would we the MVP? Like, is there any? How do we get different? Because I just don't think we cannot go with Jokic in this spot, right?
It's difficult because if you have Jokic on the lineup, like there's no salary multiplier. So like the tempting thing to do is put Jokic in the star spot, right? Because that, you're saying that Jokic can still have a good game, but he's just not the highest scoring guy. It's just that seems so unlikely. I mean, our projection on him is, almost 10 points higher than the next highest player, which is Jimmy Butler. Our projection on Jokic is 20 points high, almost 19 plus points higher than the second guy after him. Was Bam Adebayo. It is tough to get away from Jokic in the MVP spot. I think if there's one guy, and I said it in the DraftKings format, but I think it's maybe even more true on FanDuel. Like if Jamal Murray puts up 40 points, you could definitely see him in the MVP spot, and that's taking away points from Jokic, right? That's like when Jamal Murray has big outlier points games, that's a game where Jokic is potentially having a great NBA game, but he's not having a great like FanDuel scoring game, not having a great DraftKings scoring game. So I could see scenarios where you're putting Jamal Murray in the MVP spot and then Jokic in the star spot, but it's a risk.
It is tough to get away from Jokic. Like you said, my initial thought was Murray also. Wow, maybe he takes away from Jokic. Look at his best game in the playoffs was a 68 spot, which is great. Except for on FanDuel, that same game, Jokic had a 70 spot, so you still lost. I mean, that's how good. And Jokic is projected, like you said, about 20 points higher than Murray. So it's just hard to get away from Jokic. So we're going to have to try to figure out a way to get different down the road. Let's just say that Jokic is he's easily the most likely to be the MVP optimal. If there's one guy that can mess him up, it's Jimmy Butler going crazy, and Spoelstra has some good defense for Jokic and, all that goes. I don't know, but it's just tough to get away from Jokic. Star player. Now, it gets a little bit more interesting now between Butler, Bam, and Murray. What do you think about the star player?
I think I'd go Jamal Murray. Like I'd count on Denver putting up a bunch of points here, kind of blowing Miami out of the water on their short rest. And I'd go.
Or Miami saying, we let these two guys have what they want. The rest of these guys, Michael Porter Jr., Gordon, Casey, none of these other guys are going to beat us. You guys get what you want. None of these other guys are going to beat us. I can see that happening. So then you got the pro spot, $9,000 left. We're starting to get a little bit constricted by the salary. What about the pro spot? I mean, I think the natural, I don't even know if you would be able to play these top three guys in the projections in this 5,500. I don't know that you could make that happen. Going Butler, Jokic, and Murray, I don't think you can make that happen. So the pro spot for us, what are we looking at?
I'd put in Bam Adebayo. Like I said, I think he's going to have a better series against Denver than he did against Boston. I think he'll be under-owned. He's underpriced.
I think, you're going to be it's going to be tough not to be duplicated in this thing no matter what you do. It's just really difficult. So we're just going to have to eat some chalk, and I got you. But I think going Bam in pro, leaving Butler off, and going Murray, Jokic and Murray up top, I think maybe we could be a little bit just slightly different there than the Jokic Butler teams that are going to be there, and then they leave Murray off. And we got $7,000 left for two utility spots. easily make that happen with the Miami Heat and the way they play. So give me a utility guy. I mean, we got Kevin Love sitting down there. We liked him on the other side. That'll be actually we're showing a little bit of ownership for Love here, a little bit more ownership on FanDuel than was on DraftKings. So I don't know, maybe we don't do that one. What do you think about the two utility spots? We got plenty of options here.
I'd try putting in KCP.
7,500. We can make that happen. Then we got 6,500. That gives you Jeff Green, Kevin Love, Christian Braun, Cody Zeller. You mentioned Zeller. Maybe they use Zeller instead of Kevin Love here for a little defensive purposes. They need some bodies in there against Jokic. So we got options here to go to finish that off. How would you finish that off?
So I think, Kevin Love would probably be my first choice, but that maxes us out on salary. And I think you could maybe put in Christian Braun. And you're saying maybe this is a little bit of a blowout, right? You only got one Miami player on there.
Or Haywood. You mentioned Haywood Highsmith earlier in DraftKings. Highsmith is interesting. Miami is you just never know. Like he proved it. They played a little Haywood Highsmith in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. There's no reason why he couldn't get a little bit of run, Game 1, and you just never know when they have something up their sleeves involving him guarding Jamal Murray or something. I don't know. Using some length on Murray. Who knows? What do you think about Haywood? Let's plug in some Haywood Highsmith, man.
Yeah, I like it.
All right, let's do that, and then that kind of tells you where we're at right there. I don't know that you can get away from Jokic up top on FanDuel, and then after that, figure out those next two spots. But I think we ran through just about every player of significance in the series and threw some lineups together. So now I gotta get some predictions before we get out of here. You got Miami and Denver. Denver has home court advantage, 7-game series. After everything we've seen, what's your prediction on this thing?
Denver in 5.
Denver in 5. You're riding that public sentiment that Denver is just unstoppable, right?
I think Miami's had a lot taken out of it probably with that Boston series, but we'll see. I mean, Miami's been surprising people all year, all playoffs long. So, I think anything's on the table, but what do I think is most likely to happen? Denver in 5.
Fair enough. I am going to say Miami wins the series. I'm going 6 games. I'm going 6. I don't even want it to get back to a Game 7 in Denver because I wouldn't feel comfortable. So I'm going to say 6. I think that, boy, have they bucked the trend in all 3 series, but especially against Milwaukee and Boston. Would have never given them a chance. They didn't just beat Milwaukee. I know there were circumstances there with Giannis getting in it, but they beat them in 5 games. They didn't just beat Boston in 7. That was fine. They went 7. Really, they jumped up 3-0 and could have put that thing away real quick. So they beat the odds. I don't know, man. I'm going to stick with Miami, and I'm going to bet on Spoelstra being able to do something to disrupt that offense. But guys, we appreciate you tuning in. That's our DFS look for Game 1. We will be back, I'm sure, with some more shows. If it's not me and Squirrel, it'll be somebody else. We got for however long this stuff lasts. So we appreciate you tuning in. Good luck in all those GPPs. Until next time, now with Squirrel Patrol, I was your host, Chop. We're out of here.